Welcome to Movies Are Life. I'm your host, Nathan Chandler, and it's time to cut loose and kick off our Sunday shoes because we are talking about the 80s classic Footloose, which is celebrating its 40th anniversary. I'm sure that makes a lot of people feel really old, but I'm thrilled to welcome back returning guest, Beau Gatlin, to break down all the unforgettable dance sequences, the infectious soundtrack, and the all-star cast from this beloved film. So Beau, how do you feel about becoming our go-to 80s movie correspondent?
Oh, I love it. 80s movies, my favorite
Yeah.
ever. This one is no exception. So thanks for having me back. I'm so excited about this.
Oh, good. Yeah, so last time we covered the film Say Anything, which is a terrific film. And so I just kind of assumed you had a soft spot in your heart for this movie or similar ones like it.
No doubt about it. I mean, Kevin Bacon. You think the 80s, you think Kevin Bacon. Great music all the way through. Where Say Anything was a great movie for all the right reasons. This one might be a great movie for all the wrong reasons. But it's good.
Well, so before we really jump into the movie, I did want to ask you. I kind of was okay. So just from the get go, and I can't remember if I told you this or not. I had never seen this movie before, believe it or not. And
No way, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So that's kind of why when I kind of plan out the year, I kind of look at key dates, big movie releases, and I also tried to look up anniversaries. And I saw this is just always kind of I don't know why I didn't see it. I just never did. And so when I saw that it was, celebrating its 40th anniversary, February 17th is actually the exact date. I was like, this is good. This is why I love this podcast. This is a good chance to maybe see some movies that I hadn't seen before. And so, yeah, so watching this for the first time, I kind of actually wondered if maybe this movie was based on your life.
Oh, there's so much to talk about, isn't there? I can't believe that you've never seen this before because this is even way better. I'm just so excited to hear what you think about it because there's no way for me to watch this now, which I recently again, without, there's just too many tie-ins to when I saw this when I was younger. I was born in 1981. I think my mom thought there was no movie that I shouldn't see when I was younger. And this was certainly, I feel like, on replay on cable all the time. And so I've seen it, I don't even know how many times. I will say that for me, the 80s, when I think about them in 80s movies, are all about getting a young me really excited about becoming a dancer as an adult. So I don't know. When Dirty Dancing came out, 87? It was after this, right?
Yeah. That sounds about right. Yeah.
I mean, I don't know why I was watching that as a kid, but I was. Thanks, Mom. And I wanted nothing more than to be Patrick Swayze, to the extent that I begged my mom to sign me up for dance lessons, which she did very soon after. And I remember showing up. I was the only boy in a class of over probably 6 other girls doing ballet. And I think she was still in the process of signing me up when I came into the office and said, I don't think this is for me. So that's how long I lasted in dance lessons. Not long, but the dream is still alive inside of me. It's never away. So this was just maybe this one led to Dirty Dancing, but the 80s are just a lot of dance movies. I feel like, at least in my mind, with great music, both of those things. So, I don't want to get ahead of anything here, but where do you want to dive in on this one?
Okay, well, before we dive into the movie, I'm going to play a clip of the trailer here, and we'll kind of set up the movie a little bit.
He's the new kid in town, and the music's on his side.
Let's dance!
Footloose.
Footloose is a 1984 American musical drama film directed by Herbert Ross. Imagine a town where dancing is considered a crime. With Footloose, the film proves that if you've got the moves, you can change an entire town's moral compass. Kevin Bacon stars as Ren McCormick, I'm sorry, I'm going to stop for a second. Ren, I've never heard that name, Ren, before. I never. Did you ever know anybody personally named Ren?
No, never.
Very, very unique. But anyway, so Ren's a city kid who, Chicago, right, in this movie, who waltzes into a small town with a strict no dancing policy. Armed with dance shoes and a rebellious spirit, he challenges the status quo, turning the town upside down and proving that sometimes all you need to solve your problems is a good old-fashioned dance-off. It's a tale of toe-tapping defiance where the only crime is not moving your feet to the beat. The film received mixed reviews from critics and was a box office success, grossing $80 million in North America, becoming the 7th highest film of 1984. The songs Footloose by Kenny Loggins and Let's Hear It for the Boy by Denise Williams were nominated for the Academy Award for Best Original Song. There was a remake that was released in 2011. I never saw that, and I also saw that at some point there was a musical Broadway version of this movie as well, and I think it actually got nominated for some Tonys and that sort of thing. So you didn't see the remake, did you?
No, and I never will.
Yeah.
Like, flash them in. Actually, I remember they had made a new one, and when I looked up that it was made in 2011, I was like, oh wow. I mean, it just didn't even register. I don't think I'll ever watch it.
Yeah. I didn't look up how well it did, but yeah, I think a lot of people would be surprised. Like, wait, there was a remake, you know? So, yeah. So, okay. So, kind of, I don't know, like spoiler alert for this movie, but my feelings. So, I'm sure you're curious since now you know that this was my first time
curious.
seeing it. Yeah. So, I did enjoy this movie. I as you know, as ridiculous as it was in so many ways, I thought it was just, I could totally see why it made such an imprint that it did. And because there's just, watching it the first time, right, there's so many scenes that will just be forever stuck in my mind now. So that just
such as what's the first that comes to mind for you?
Well, Footloose could also be titled AKA Playing Chicken. I don't know what the fascination with this movie is of playing chicken. At the beginning, there's this insane scene with the girls, you know, and Ariel, like, you know, basically doing a split between two cars as they're about to hit this diesel. That later there's a tractor chicken face off between Ren and the kind of bully, so to speak, of this movie. So anyway, I was just like, I almost got my feelings hurt a little bit because Back to the Future has always been one of my favorite movies, and I always associated playing chicken, you know, being chicken associated with that movie. And I was like, no, it was Footloose the whole time. Yeah, so yeah, that's what I did enjoy the movie, and actually it was kind of an interesting thing because we watched Can't Buy Me Love and a couple of episodes ago. Have you seen that movie with Patrick Dempsey?
I have seen that movie. I can't wait till I need to listen to your podcast on it. I want to hear your takes on it. I haven't done so yet, but yeah.
Yeah. So overall, I didn't really enjoy that movie. And so when watching Footloose, I was kind of sitting here going, okay. And once again, I hadn't seen Can't Buy Me Love either. And in my head, I was kind of thinking like, why did I not, you know, really like that one? And I was kind of more drawn to this one. And I think more so is like, to me, Can't Buy Me Love is trying to be a comedy and it wasn't funny. Footloose is pretty sincere in its efforts. And so things come across as humorous that aren't intended to be. So I think that's part of the reason. But even though as this, you know, this town is band dancing and just as 80s as this whole premise is, I felt like there were like also like, I don't know, the sincerity of the movie kind of came through to me. I don't know if that makes sense to you at all.
Yeah, I think so. Upon watching this now as a grown up, my immediate thoughts for this is a movie supposedly set in the country, right? I mean, it's we've got the big city boy that's come to rural town somewhere.
Yeah,
I guess it's the mountains of Utah, maybe. But I told my wife Stacy, I said, this feels like a movie, like with the chicken and doing things on tractors. It feels like a movie written by someone who's never actually been to the country, but like this is their idea of what it's like in the country, you know, and they never took the time to actually go there. So, you know, tractors are big, expensive, dangerous pieces of equipment no one from the country is doing these types of ridiculous things, like maybe running a tractor or two into a ditch. That just, stupid things happen in the country. I've been a part of some, but not like that. That would just be insane, just way out there. And then, I mean, the first scene where Ariel is going between cars on the highway, that's absolutely bonkers.
That's so crazy.
She should have died so many times.
Yeah.
She got a death wish. You're right. This is the movie also known as Chicken. You're so right. That's funny.
Yeah.
That's
and also there could maybe be another subtitle, and it could be Ariel is insane.
Ariel is insane. I think that you're right. That this one is maybe more sincere. It is ridiculous. I mean, it has all the bits of 80s campiness that are in any of these. I think the least relatable character to me is Ariel. But there's some really great endearing characters. Willard, the best friend that comes to know Ren really well. I don't care for her in anything ever, but Sarah Jessica Parker is, I think, in this movie.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed her as Rusty. I will say, so I mean, you're married to a PK, right? And maybe there are probably a lot of things in this movie that when I watched as a young person felt really relatable to me. Small town, that the element of knowing a PK, and this whole idea of this town is somehow really run by this church was, I mean, I was never in a town like that, but I'm from Oklahoma where there's a church on every corner. I grew up going to church, and so that felt very familiar. So there's a lot of elements that really drew me into this, and the dancing and the great music.
Yeah. Well, in my research, apparently this movie was loosely based on the events that took place in a small, rural, extremely religious farming town of Elmore City, Oklahoma, in 1978. So apparently dancing had been banned for nearly 90 years until a group of high school teenagers challenged it. So I didn't know if you were aware of that.
I was only aware of that as of today when I also did some research, and I don't know that I've ever been more surprised and not surprised in the same moment that, of course, this was a small town in Oklahoma. Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah. And I looked it up on the map, and so I reside in Norman, which is about 20 minutes south of Oklahoma City. And so anyway, Elmore City is really not that far off of 35 between Norman and the Texas border. So like, I mean, yeah, if you've done that route at all, I mean, if you're an OU student, from Texas, like you've passed Elmore City many, many, many times. So you have probably driven through that town trying to weave around the construction that they've had up lately. So you might have done it yourself, coming from Houston up here sometimes.
I mean, I don't know how the fact that's based on a town in Oklahoma has escaped me for this long of my life. Of all the claims to fame that Oklahoma has, Garth Brooks, Reba, Toby Keith, R.I.P. You never hear about Footloose being based on a story from maybe they're not so proud of that, right? It was dancing with them there for 90 years, but that's kind of amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, I had no idea it was based on a true story until today. It's amazing. Now, more surprising to me is that I was reading one of the main people, and I don't want to offend anybody here, one of the main people that was against it was a Pentecostal pastor.
Oh, really?
Now, yeah. I mean, I don't know if you know much about denominations, but Pentecostals are typically not the more reserved of reservations of denominations. So that was surprising to me as well. All right, I want to know your other thoughts on this as a first time viewing.
Okay. Oh, well, another big thing that stood out to me, for sure, and I knew this. I had always known it was known for its soundtrack. I mean, obviously, even our girls knew the song "Footloose" without having seen this movie before. That song is kind of inescapable from like just pop culture, I guess. And even I loved, by the way, I love the opening. It just the shots of the different feet. I just thought it was I just really liked that for whatever reason. I'm surprised at how well I knew the songs from this movie. Like, it was shocking to me, like how many popular songs were from this. And so that was another thing that stood out to me. Like, I had always heard what a great soundtrack it was, and it was like, oh gosh, yeah, it is. I know like all these songs. So that was definitely, I mean, that has to add to the appeal to this movie, that, if as silly as it is, it did kind of nail that perfectly. I mean, it got, as I mentioned, two of the songs got nominated for Oscars. I mean, I knew Kevin Bacon was in this and John Lithgow. I knew that. But yeah, the all-star cast, Diane Weiss and Chris Penn, Sarah Jessica Parker, like you mentioned. So I was kind of taken aback by how many faces I recognized. I didn't know Laurie Singer as well as Ariel. I kind of looked up her IMDb, and it seems like she still did a lot of things after that. But so those were the things that stood out to me. I think as a fan, in a podcast, Whitney was giving me a hard time that I think it was like Can't Buy Me Love, that she was kind of mad at me for not liking the cheesiness of that. But I think this movie just played to like my heart that loves shows like Full House or something like that.
Yeah. I had read that the screenwriter for this, Dean Pitchford.
Okay. Yeah.
He had heard this story about this town, breaking this 90-year ban on dancing, and spent some time there. So I guess he did get some idea of what life is like in a small town, enough to write it. But he, I think, wrote a lot of the songs on it. Co-wrote, I should say. But,
okay.
9 original songs on this, and 3 made the top 10, 2 number 1 hits. It's amazing. I mean, Kenny Loggins was just the master of 80s movies. I mean, what other movies did he do? Top Gun. Kenny Loggins.
Top Gun. Yeah, for sure.
Caddyshack.
Yep.
My personal favorite 80s movie, Over the Top, was Sylvester Stallone, about a truck driving arm wrestler. I mean, he just did every song that was great in the 80s. And I mean, it's got a great movie poster, great album cover. It's just everything. So I did have you ever done the what is it, 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon?
Yes.
Played that game?
Yeah.
Is that what it is, or is it 3 degrees? I don't know.
No, it's 6.
But it's true, and probably most of them are through this movie. So many stars in it. It's Diane Weiss? Is that how you say it? She was like an 80s mom, Parenthood, Edward Scissorhands, and so many great movies she was in. And then this is a great jumping off point for if you're getting into 80s movies. You're going to see a lot of familiar people here. I love you have to suspend disbelief when you watch any movie, but the very first thing that I loved about this one was, I think the opening scene is a church scene, right? It's a Sunday afternoon, apparently. John Lithgow does his first sermon, and then church lets out probably around noon. And then his daughter is introduced to Ren for the first time. She's like, "All right, Dad, I'm going to take off and go down to get some burgers or whatever." Then they do the death-defying chicken scene, and the next thing we see, it's like nighttime, and they're at the burger place. And it pulled me out of the movie for a minute, because I was like, how long were they on this drive before they got to the dinner place where everyone's dancing, right? Of course, there's music playing and everyone is into it, of course.
Yeah, that scene cracked me up. That almost is when I was in. Like, I was like, okay, this even the chef is like getting into it.
So the danger of movies like this is that when you watch them when you're young and impressionable, like I was, is you really believe that, wow, like everyone is dancing. Everyone wants to dance and does dance together all the time. So you got to be careful when you watch this thing, if you're young like I was, because it can kind of maybe mess with your sense of reality, what people are really going to be into.
Yeah. Well, and like you, like I grew up in a Baptist church, and it was not to this level, for sure. But I think there was elements of that kind of smaller town, the church basically having a pretty big influence on on the town, versus some other things. And so I think that kind of spoke to me. That's a little too deep to say, but I went to Baylor University, which is a Baptist school, and I remember my freshman year, which was the year 2001. And I think like fraternities and sororities had always had like dances and stuff, but like they had basically a dance like before, right when school started. I think it was called Howdy or something like that. And that was like the first like dance, like school, I guess Baylor's tag, however you want to say that, that they've ever had. Like Baylor used to not have dances. And so anyway, yeah. So, and that was, in 2000. So, it's kind of, not, I guess like super far fetched, now to have a banning on dancing. It's just funny. It's just like, how would you police such things? But, there you go. So, I had a couple of notes. So I also liked the fact that this small town somehow has a gymnastics team that I guess Kevin Bacon's character gets cut from.
Yeah.
Thanks
for bringing that up, because that was maybe the most far-fetched thing in the movie. And not only was he cut from it, you never actually saw the gymnastics team. You just saw the equipment in the gym. Of two fairly, athletic, masculine guys just, hammering out some gymnastics moves like it's nobody's business. That was interesting as well. I don't know. Maybe in Utah, that's a thing.
Maybe. I thought that, and I like how it was almost just a throwaway. Like he's like, "Gosh, I got cut from the team," and I was like, "Wait, he was part of a team?" Like when was this? Yeah, this movie does kind of just yada yada over some details, like for sure. But I found like his relationship with the Chris Penn character. I'm trying to look up his name. Willard, is that it?
Willard.
Yeah. There was something a little like it kind of endearing about that whole thing and their friendship. I thought that was kind of a natural thing that kind of blossoms in this thing. And I love a good montage scene, and the scene where he's teaching him how to dance, and it like, Chris Penn very much looks like someone who cannot dance. Apparently he really could not. And he gets the spotlight at the end, and it's pretty impressive. So I enjoyed that part of it as well.
Really impressive. I was reading. I mean, I think one of the memorable scenes from this movie is when Kevin Bacon is just frustrated. He's mad, and he's got to go get it out. So he of course goes to a really old warehouse. Has to dance and do like leaps and stuff. And I think I read that there were no fewer than 2 dance doubles and 2 like stunt doubles. That entire scene where he's dancing in the dark in a warehouse. And there's some great moves in there, and very dramatic lighting and music. And I mean, it's just what other way would sometimes you just got to burn off that anger. So you just go dance it out. It was just amazing. And one of the things I appreciate about Kevin Bacon, I think this is a very 80s thing, is the level that he clearly does nothing with his hair at all, and it just stands end to end. It's super cool for back then. In the movie, I think even his cousin says he's a fox. To go back a little bit, I think one of the things that's very relatable about this movie is someone coming in that's new and exciting to everybody in the town. In the high school, he's a big city boy, and he's exotic to them, and to some degree exotic to him as well. And when I was a kid in the summer times, we would, I'm from a really small town of 900, but I spent a lot of time in the city, Oklahoma City, with cousins. And that was always exciting for me. And then in the summer times, we would go to an even smaller town than where I grew up near the panhandle of Oklahoma. And that was so exciting for me too, because there were friends I saw there that were very country, and I only saw them in the summers really. And so I got to dance between these different worlds all the time and come in and out of them and not necessarily have to have my whole life in one. And so I can remember just being around people who seemed so exciting at the time, because I don't know anything about their lives, and you see these just vignettes, and they kind of get to be who they want to be in those moments. But yeah, I really like how, as an adult watching this now, as silly as some of the things are, the view, or even the pastor and his wife are coming from. You can see how they get there. You can see how loss leads you to want to go to an extreme of overly protecting and being protective. And then how, of course, the teenagers would have no real maybe perspective on that as to why it would be such a big deal to them, but it's all fairly believable.
Yeah, I totally agree. As ridiculous as this whole movie is, that there was something about that kind of grounded me a little bit more, and I appreciated that because, exactly like you said, there's people. I do feel like, as far as like censorship goes, it's usually, the censorship is almost like not filling a void, but just like there has to be like a triggering effect. Like you do, I don't think people just think this just because. Well, I think maybe some people do, but it's usually grounded in something that's probably happened in their life. To think that that's the drastic nature that you would have to take to burn books and that sort of thing. I mean, watching this, I was just kind of like, oh gosh, I can't believe we're still in a world where like burning books is like seems to be an option for people, but it is. But I do think you're right. I appreciated the scene like where Ren has just a sit down conversation with Lithgow about the dance and like where they're coming from. Like I know that sounds funny, but I like that this they did they humanized these characters enough in to realize that the true way to like kind of get through whatever's going on is just a conversation about where each other is at. And so you hear so much like if people just had conversations, this world would be better. And I thought that scene actually kind of touched on that. Now I might be giving this movie more credit than it deserves, but I did like that element to it of showing the human. You could easily make the Lithgow preacher character just a total villain, and I thought it added some dimension and depth to the whole scenario.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of another scene that was interesting. Oh, where Ren and Willard took Rusty and Ariel to a country dance hall. Do you remember this? Where one song that was played there was a country song. At all. Everyone's in cowboy boots,
I did notice
drinking beers, and there was not one country song played at all. And in that scene is where I think Willard he doesn't know how to dance, and so he just sits there like a bump on a log the whole time, and just gets angry and anxious, and watches his girl go dance with someone else. Which leads me to want to ask you a question. What did you go to many high school dances growing up, Nathan? What were those like for you?
Oh, let's see. You're kind of cutting into my movie musings segment where I was going to ask you the same thing. But actually, yes, we did have a lot of dances because in high school we actually didn't have too many school dances, but there was this kind of group. What's the thing? Oh yeah, it's like you took cotillion in 5th grade. Did you ever take anything like that?
No. Mm-mm.
No. Okay. So we're part of cotillion, and it became, I don't know why. I can't think of the name right now. It had this weird acronym. I think it was called TERPS or something like that. But anyway, you were in this group, and it was like a group of my friends and stuff. And there were like three dances every year, like your freshman, sophomore. And so one was a little more formal. One was, like a movie theme or something like that. So anyway, and at the time I had a girlfriend at a different high school. So she had her dances too. So I actually, like my junior year, I bought a tux because it was so much cheaper than renting one because I had so many like formal type of things. And so you would think with all these dances that there would be some talent to emerge from me, but there was not at all.
Did you?
Still,
I mean, but did you get some moves on your belt though? I mean, did you have some go-tos that when the moment struck, you would say, "Hey, here's the time."
no, never. I'm actually still to this day terrified of like, when people like form the circle and somebody goes in the middle and like, does something. That's like my worst nightmare. What about you?
Okay, so my mother was a teacher at the small high school that in the small town we were at, and she for whatever reason was like a dance sponsor. Like she was always
Oh,
there at the dances. I think she was a student council sponsor. So she was at most dances. And so that meant I was also at most dances from the time I was probably in, I don't know, third grade or something. So I got to watch a lot of dancing before, doing any dancing. And by the time I got into seventh grade and was able to go to my own dances, I was probably just, glued to the wall and nervous to get out. So that was me for a long time. And then I reached a point to where I just didn't care anymore. And so I would just sit there and have fun and just be stupid, I think dancing's kind of silly anyway, like slow dancing in middle school. It's just awkward and silly. There's just too much anxiety tied to it. So no, I got to see a lot of great dances in the 90s. And lots of fun things as a third grader. And but no, I have a couple of go-to moves. You need a suit jacket to pull one of them off. Forever to dance again. I'll show you some of these things. You can make them your own, but I only have 2 or 3, and then I just kind of go find a seat.
yeah.
So I can relate to Willard in this moment, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Not Kevin Bacon.
Yeah, I definitely can have fun at a dance and there is at some point you realize in your head that like you said, it's more like everybody having fun. And there's really, maybe besides those like moments of like someone in the middle of a dance circle, like nobody's really paying it. Everybody's probably more concerned, especially in high school, like what they look like versus like people actually judging what you're doing. Everybody's just pretty self-centered. And so when you get to that point where you can let go, it definitely fun. And especially in a house with 2 girls who love to dance, and I'm sure very similar situation for you with 3 girls. You just kind of have to, like, Just Dance is a very popular game in our house, and my girls make fun of how bad I'm at it, but hey, I just give it my best. So
I can remember there being a few people. There's probably always been a dance that they had no business having as much fun being as bad as they were at dancing. But as I can remember seeing people just be terrible, and they did not care, and there was just something infectious about being around them. And they were just fun to be around because they just didn't care, and they were terrible. I mean, they would pull the jacket off and run it between the legs. I mean, just ridiculous stuff. But have you ever seen Better Off Dead? John Cusack.
It has been a long time, but yes, I have seen it.
I mean, that's probably my favorite 80s movie, actually. And there's a dance scene in that movie where, probably the nerdiest guy in that movie shows up with totally unearned confidence and dominates the dance circle. I mean, just dominates it. And so I saw some of that in my school. So that was good. So there's also a lot of fighting in this movie.
Well, I made a note about that because as much as I kind of just built up, the Reverend Shaw Moore here, the fact that he hits his daughter and we never returned to the fact that took place is kind of a little, as Hallie would say, a little sus.
A little sus. I agree. I was when I saw it happen in the movie, I was like, oh, like, but right after he does say he's never hit anyone in his life ever before.
Yeah. And that makes it okay.
I'm not saying that makes it okay, but it does kind of just go by the wayside there. That was interesting. And then, that was nice to kind of see him come around at the end, though. Now his wife is like, I've stuck by you all these years. Oh, you've done your thing. And maybe this isn't the hill that you die on. So
Yeah. And I thought as a whole, Ariel just really had a rough go in this movie. I mean, with
Mhm.
was it Chuck? I mean, like there's a full on like fight, like a choreographed fight scene between
yeah,
these two.
it's true. I don't know if you saw much of that up in your town. I definitely saw just a lot of stupid fights growing up. I really did. I mean, there were times I was not on the receiving end of those, but I remember there's someone in my class who was always dating a boy 3 years older than her. It's one of those things, and
Yeah.
she was in my class and we were friends. And I was walking down the hallway one day, and some guy like shoulder checks me into a locker, and it's like, what's going on here? And he's like, you need to stay away from so and so. I mean, for real. And I was like, what are you talking about? Like, I'm not. We're friends, but I mean, it was just, maybe it's a
Yeah.
small town thing, maybe it isn't. But so I could relate to those things too. They're just so stupid, but I guess they happen everywhere.
Yeah.
Especially in high school.
So this leads me. Besides that instance, have you ever been in a fight before?
Yes, I have been in
Really?
several fights. Oh yeah,
What?
yeah, I have. I have. So,
With who?
well, I won't name names,
Okay.
but they were a long time ago. They were when I was in grade school, maybe a little bit older. So I was the type of little kid that would love to shoot his mouth off at people to get a rise out of people. And I did this once at a football game to a kid who was a little bit older than me. And I'm not kidding. Like the next day, I was walking home from school. I lived about, I don't know, 4 blocks from school. And someone was following me. And it was this kid. And he caught up to me. And he threw me on the ground and beat me up.
Oh, geez.
I know I was like maybe 3rd, 4th grade.
Oh,
It was
wow.
terrible. Yeah, it was terrible. And it's 3, 4 years goes by. I think I was in middle school, high school now, and he had moved away, and I was downtown at a pool hall, and I ran into him, and I was a lot bigger than him, right? Because I'd grown up,
Yeah.
and my mouth got really big, and I was being really mouthy, and he followed me home again, and I had a friend with me. And I'm not kidding here. He was like walking around me, like, say something, do something, come on. And he punched me in the face again.
Oh.
And but I was a lot bigger now, and it didn't really do anything to me. And I remember there was a moment there where I was like, oh my gosh, like he just gave me a good one, and it kind of hurt, but I'm still standing, and I feel like I could like wail on this guy.
Yeah.
And so I didn't. I kept walking, but I
Oh.
could have. I knew in my head I could have. So I don't think the last fight I was in was actually with a roommate in college who was a dear friend, and he was stubborn like an ox, and we were, fighting about something one day. And at the time I wasn't. I mean, he's the last person I'd want to fight, and he was just making me mad. So I went and wailed on him for a little bit. I don't think it bothered him at all, but I considered it a fight. So that's it. I've never been in a big vicious though, outside that where I've really ever hurt anybody. Not at all. I was probably more on the receiving end of the hurt than anybody. How about you? Have you been in any fights?
This is why I love this podcast. I would never have guessed those stories from you. That's amazing. Actually, no. So I'm just I think if people know me, I'm definitely a peacemaker. For whatever reason, I would say I definitely have been like curious about almost never to the level of like a movie like Fight Club, but in that whole thing they kind of talk about like how do you know what type of person you are if you've never been in a fight before, and so but now I'm not giving this as an open invitation to next time we see each other, you hitting me and like seeing if I can take it or not, But the closest I ever came was like in junior high, and I was on the basketball team, and there was this one guy, and it was just getting a little contentious, like between us, like guarding each other. And like every time we were checking the ball, it was becoming a little harder and a little harder. And so he like checked it at me like really hard, and it just that was the last straw, and I just basically chunked the ball at his head and hit his head. And so anyway, he was about to come at me, but I think he didn't have too many like friends on the basketball team, and the rest of the guys on the team had my back, so that got diffused really fast. And so that was about the closest. So anyway, but yeah, I'm almost a little too practical for fighting. I don't get it. I don't think it really solves anything. So yeah, but I did have that note from this movie because as it's exploring these like bigger themes, and especially of what like dance can provide to a community, how like even the final scene, Ren and I keep forgetting his name, the Chris Penn character, they basically have this full-on fight, with everything, and that this movie is basically saying this was the solution to the problem. So as much as this movie is, saying, hey, go to the city council, speak your heart, it still falls into these like, but when the time comes, get ready to fight.
That's right. Yeah, and it's right before the best part of the movie to me is like the final dance scene where everyone's into it. I mean, it's glitter is falling the whole time. It's amazing. It's a great scene, and there's a fight right before that. Of course there is.
Yeah. So I'm still a little mad at Hallie. So I essentially forced Hallie to watch this movie with me, and she probably saw more of it than she's saying, but still, she pretty much just looked at her phone the whole time. She said Footloose was really annoying, the song itself, so she was out from the get-go, but she sat by me the whole time. So, but anyway, she did see the final scene, and she did ask, why is there so much glitter? it's just like cascading the whole time to everybody.
It's amazing though, and it kept going, and I wondered as I was watching it this time how many times and how much glitter they must have had, because they must have filmed that so many dance sequences in that, and I want to be at a dance like that. I mean, glitter might as well be falling the whole time. It's pretty amazing.
I'm really coming across as a really cool person in this podcast. I've never fought anybody. I'm not a good dancer, and I was about to say I just hate glitter because of the mess that it makes. That factory owner was so willing to like let them use his facility. I wonder if he accounted for like how much cleanup there would be afterwards.
I mean, you just gotta live.
Movie Musings.
We talked about dancing, so my second question for you was well, you kind of mentioned it, you like to run your mouth off, but was there ever a time that you were like rebellious or tried to buck the system like Ren here in this town?
Oh, absolutely. All right. No, I'm sure none of my 30 classmates are going to be ever listening to this. No offense, Nate. This is a great podcast and they should listen to it because they'd enjoy it. But when I was a freshman, so I was in high school when the whole like alternative grunge thing was going on. And so I just thought you were supposed to be angsty and life was supposed to be miserable. I'm sure I had nothing to be miserable about. But my mom actually let me bleach my hair and dye it bright blue, which amazed me that she let me do that. And it's one of the first times in my life where I was a freshman when I did that. Every straight-laced boy in school called me every kind of name you can probably imagine that they would have called me back then.
Yeah.
And every girl gave me nothing but like compliments about it. And I figured out how things really were. And I was like, this is a really worthwhile trade-off. And so I don't care at all that like, all the jocks are like calling me these names. So yeah, I kind of, being from a small town, I don't see myself as a small town person. I think it helped me. I think I had a pretty good streak in me of, I don't know what you'd call it, but I didn't think I'd be in a small town for the rest of my life. So there's a little bit of an me versus them kind of mentality pretty early on. So yeah, I was into music my friends were listening to. Yeah, when the Bulls played the Suns in the NBA Finals, I was firmly a Suns fan just because everyone else was a Bulls fan. I remember getting Yeah.
You had your Dan Marley jersey on.
I definitely had a Phoenix Suns hat that I wore to church and got bullied at church because why would anyone be a Suns fan when there's Michael Jordan and the Bulls? Which now I totally agree with that. That's just how I was wired. So yeah, there was definitely a rebellious streak in me to that extent of rebelling against the status quo with my blue hair.
That's awesome. Well, you mentioned music a little bit, and we talked about how great the soundtrack is to this movie. So, what do you consider one of your favorite soundtracks, or one of the best soundtracks?
Oh, for a movie?
Yeah, and I would say maybe I'm thinking more like kind of compilation, kind of like this one, not so much score based, but
Yeah. Oh, that's a good question. I have to think about that for a minute. So go ahead.
Well, while you're thinking about it, I was one of mine that is always kind of on the top of my head is the Forrest Gump soundtrack. And even though just because that soundtrack was probably, even though I had heard older music before, it actually like kind of introduced me to a lot of songs that I just hadn't really dived into. And the way that that movie spans, several decades. And so I just always liked that. And I'll forever remember just it was a double CD. One was red, one was blue. For whatever reason, there's a lot of memories tied up into that music as well. But that's always been like one of my favorites.
That's a great one. I can remember that being everywhere, that double album being everywhere. Okay. Yeah. I like this question, right? Because it's something that's near and dear to me. So I'm going to name a few. Okay. Just formative for me. First one, Good Will Hunting.
Okay.
It's mostly Elliott Smith, but it's a soundtrack that goes so great with a movie. And those were songs not written for that movie, but they fit it so well. Another one would be Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?
Yeah.
A lot of bluegrass on there. Let's see. Another one that I really, really love is That Thing You Do. That does have some original songs. Goes along with it great. And then when I was a kid, my mom bought me some cassettes. They must have been in like the bargain bin at Walmart. But there was one from a movie called A Fine Mess. It had Ted Danson in it, I think. And I think most of the songs are by The Temptations.
Oh, okay.
And I listen to that a lot. So there you go.
Yeah, nice, very nice. Well, kind of wrapping up this movie, I'm sure you could really try to really dive into the deeper meanings to this movie, but overall, I definitely thought very, very entertaining. I could totally see why pop culture had like kind of latched onto this movie. But kind of as a closing thought question for you, why do you think this movie has resonated with audiences over all these years?
Oh, that's easy. It's got great looking people in it, having a good time. There are some, themes that are consistent to any age. Stand up for what you believe in, making some changes, having a good time. I think that's it.
Nice. That's a good summary. If the filmmakers to Footloose just heard what you just said, I think they'd be like, "Yep, he gets it. Beau gets it."
Call me up, guys. Let's do another one.
Recommendations.
It's been a little while since we've talked. Has there anything you've really been digging lately?
Yes. You recommended a few episodes back to United Reservation Dogs. I think I had maybe just started or not yet.
Yeah.
I just finished the last season. If you're someone that can tolerate some language, I don't know that there's a better show on television that will hit you straight in your heart. I mean, gosh, the characters in that, the writing in it, the sense of family and caring and love, and it's raw and it's real. I love that show so much. So Reservation Dogs, I give it a 10 out of 10. The other thing I'm catching up on is Fargo, the TV series. Just finished season 4 of that. I don't know that the bad season of that either. Oh, it's good stuff. Yeah. So those are my two.
Very good. Yeah, very good shows.
I should mention a family friend, Choir. Just watch that with the kids on Disney Plus.
Okay.
Follows the Detroit Youth Choir, I think, and it's amazing. It's a feel good one.
Yeah. Now is that like a documentary that's like real life?
Yes. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, I
Okay.
saw that, and I kind of wondered if our girls would watch that. It being more reality TV, I didn't know if they would like that or not.
Oh, I have one more. If you haven't seen this, is on Disney Plus also. It's called The Last Repair Shop. It
Okay,
follows. It's reality. It's a movie. It's not long. It's maybe 40 minutes long. It follows a particular repair. It's part of the Los Angeles school system. They apparently repair instruments for free and have instruments for free. And so it follows four of the people that work in this repair shop. They've each got kind of their pull at the heartstrings story. Either they're an immigrant or they're from an excluded class of people. But then it follows students that have gone through there, and it wraps up with just the most tear-jerking scene ever. It's worth watching if you have 38 minutes of your time. It is amazing. It's called The Last Repair Shop. So
okay, great,
really
great recommendations. I'm working my way. I don't think I'm gonna get to watch all the movies that were nominated for Best Picture before the Oscars air, but I'm trying to. And I finally watched Past Lives, which is streaming on Paramount Plus, but also the name of the service escaped me. I saw there's basically a streaming service that's tied to your library, but I saw that Past Lives had popped up on that one. So there's a way you could watch it. Canopy. There we go. It's on Canopy as well. So do you know much about the movie?
No, tell me about it.
Oh, okay. So basically it follows this woman who grew up in Korea, and her family's immigrated to Toronto, and she has this deep childhood friendship with this boy. And so they kind of reconnect when she's in New York, like over social media. And then it kind of flash forwards again, and she's married, she has a life now, and he does too, but there's still like a connection there. So it just kind of explores that, and a lot of like it's almost like a realistic look of like what could have been, or deep connections. And it's a very I don't want to say deep in the sense that it's not a hard movie to like get caught up in, but man, it's very thought provoking, and also doesn't there's drama in it, but it's almost like I felt like you could see the scenario playing out. Like it doesn't elevate the drama, and a lot of what's so powerful about it is what's unsaid in the movie. And so definitely you can see why it's like nominated for the awards it is, and it's just kind of one of those smaller films it came out like originally in the summer, and it's had these legs to kind of make it I think any movie that came out like such a long time ago and is able to still, kind of make it to the awards circuit is, a pretty good one. And so I think you really like it a lot. Now it's a very quiet movie. It takes its time. So if you're if you've had a tiring week, it might not be the movie to throw on.
Okay.
You might fall asleep, not because the content's not good, but just because it's a very quiet, soft type of movie. But it's very good. But yeah, streaming on Paramount Plus or on Canopy, which is tied to your local library. So check that out. And if people don't know about Canopy, people should check that service out. So thanks for doing this movie, being willing to jump into this world of dancing. So remember, you can always visit moviesyourlife.com for all our episode reviews and more. You can find the episode that Beau was on about Say Anything. And we also covered the movie Prey, even though that was an 80s movie. It was basically a prequel to a very popular 80s movie. So, but yeah, if you love this podcast, just please take a moment to rate and review it. Tell people about it.
Thanks, Nathan. I can't wait to do another one of these. I hope you ask again.
Yeah, no, definitely. This was a lot of fun. I hope everybody has a great week. I hope you have a great week. And remember, if things get too stressful for you, just find an empty warehouse somewhere and just get some good dance on and get all your frustrations out.
I will. I'll get Footloose.
There you go. Talk to you later.